It's my feel-good breakfast show.
So prestigious and incredible and amazing, that intro. Welcome back to your Feel Good Breakfast Show. This is Expresso. And while the reality of attending sold-out arena concerts and crowded festivals and packed sports matches is still out of reach, we do miss the thrill of attending large public events. Now, however, as in the case of the 2001 Ellis Park Stadium Stampede or the recent Travis Scott Astroworld Festival crowd surge, no one should ever go to a public event and not come home safe or alive. Now, it's time for another edition of our feature where we focus on the unconventional side of law. It's called So Now What? And we're calling on, once again, our incredible legal guidance officer, executive managing director, expert in law, director of legalese.co.za, Eitan Stern, to answer the question, I want to keep a large crowd at my public events safe. So now what? Eitan,
Nice.
so we turn to you.
With that sort of intro, I hope I can meet the description that you've just...
No, but it's true. You can. You
Okay.
are the CEO of law for me. When I think about law, I just think about you. That's how it goes.
Let's move
so you're like, let's start off.
Yes.
How do you assess risks when
Okay.
it comes to a large crowd? So I want to do an event. I know how many people are going to be there.
Sure.
But I need to know what the risk is versus the people. So does that risk assessment change as the crowd gets larger or as the
Yeah.
venue gets larger as well?
Totally. So the first thing to clear up is we're talking about large-scale events.
Yes, that's
We're
correct.
not talking about birthday parties
No,
at
no,
your
no.
house or weddings. And generally for small events, you're not going to need a safety officer or anything like that.
Yes.
That's important for people to understand as
Yeah.
a starting point. When you're starting to throw a public event, then certainly there's two factors. First of all, the police are going to need to, the police have an obligation in order to put a plan in action.
Yeah.
And they discuss factors like the availability of policing,
Yes.
the venue, the size of the crowd, and they put a plan into action.
Okay.
The event organizer also has to apply to the city for a license. And when applying for the license, they have to submit their plans around how many people, the venue,
Yes.
what their safety precautions are going to be.
Okay.
And the city kind of decides from there whether they're allowed to run the event or not. And definitely, the bigger the event, the bigger the plans that they have to have in place. And, because, crowds are fantastic and a brilliant thing. And I miss them terribly.
Yes.
But they can also, I think one of the things that make them so incredible is they can be quite dangerous. So, if the safety procedures are not in place, it can really be a dangerous thing. So it needs to be managed like that.
Something very interesting while studying was crowd psychology. And
Yes.
the bigger the crowd, the more anonymity people have, which means that there's almost this dulling of traditional sort of inhibitions around
Yes.
going crazy.
Totally. Actually, in researching this, I read an article about crowd safety and about how that actually plays out psychologically and mathematically in terms of
Yeah.
the amount of people in a space. And it's a terrifying thing,
It is.
a crowd, because it is an uncontrollable thing. It's like a waterfall. Can't stop it.
So safety measures are very, very important. Let's explore those for a second because you have to have them. And then I'm
Totally.
assuming when you apply, you have to have an emergency plan. I know everybody's got an assembly point or something to that effect. So
Yeah.
let's navigate that, even if it's just to scan over it for a second. Safety measures, emergency plan.
Cool. So this is something which is very well regulated,
Okay.
and in South Africa actually works pretty fantastically across the board. So every city deals with it a little bit differently, but when you apply to the city for a license, you have to submit your safety plan,
Yes.
your evacuation plan, a fire risk plan.
Yeah.
The police need to submit a plan, and there are all these different plans that need to be submitted for you to be able to,
Yes.
to get a license to run an event. Not only that, but event organizers often need to put indemnities to say, listen, if something goes wrong, I'm taking some aspect of responsibility, and then other aspects I'm not having responsibility over.
Okay.
And then crucial is always insurance, event organizers should always have insurance to
Yeah.
cover if something goes wrong, that the people will be able to pay it out who got injured, or that the event organizer is not going to, lose their business over it. So insurance is also a crucial one.
Indeed. I actually wanted to get onto that
Yeah.
because let's just say if you are injured, if you're going out to a venue and perhaps there's a problem with one of the equipment failure of some sort, or let's just say scaffolding, there's
Yeah.
a problem there. Let's just say if you are injured in that space, I'd like to know how you navigate that sort of thing, especially if there's some sort of indemnity. I mean, that's obviously to the authorities, but
Totally.
me as a concert goer, if I'm going to go there and I get injured, do I have a leg to stand on?
Yeah. Well, hopefully you've still got a leg to stand on if you
True
get
that.
injured.
True that.
So generally in life, in every situation, if someone has done something wrong, either intentionally
Yes.
or grossly negligently,
Yeah.
then they could be liable. If you haven't done something wrong, you won't be. So if you go to an event and by a complete stroke of bad luck, something falls on you, and this is like the best, you had the best rigging company, you put the best safety measures in place, and you did everything by the book, and a bolt of lightning hits something and falls on a crowd member. It's unlikely that the event organizer will be liable. But if the event organizer has cut corners, not put the plans in place, and not done what they were supposed to, then there would be. So, that's always the first assessment. Hopefully, in any event, the event organizer would have insurance to be able to pay for any claims. But, it's always going to come down to aspects of fault, whether the event organizer is in the wrong or whether, it's just one of the risks that we assume. If you want no risk, stay at home. Once you start to go out into the world, you are accepting some elements of risk, and that's something that everyone needs to know.
Well, thank you so much. That was only part one, by the way. Many, many more facets to the law of crowds, so to speak. So stick around for part two coming up shortly.
It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Welcome back. I missed you so much, and you're back here on your Feel Good Breakfast Show, Expresso here at S3. And what we need to do is just unpack a bit more around, let's just say, the law of crowds, crowd management, and of course the legalities that circle that. And the one individual that circles us when we have something law-related is the man who is a lawyer and director at legalese.co.za, Eitan Stern, still here breaking down the ins and outs. So crowd management, it is a grey area, but of course we just discussed fraud, Black Friday's coming up, etc. And it actually got me thinking about theft and harassment at a big event.
We don't miss that.
Yeah, no, we don't at all. You see, we miss the parties, but and the entertainment, but not that type of thing. And I mean, pickpocketing is such a, it's a headache. So the event security that an event organizer would employ, they also have some sort of scope of control. And I'm sure limitations as well. So where does that start and where does that end before the police need to get involved?
Yeah, so I think it's a fascinating one for South Africa as a whole because we have such a big presence of private security. I think private security outnumbers actual police by about 5 to 1 in South Africa. So how does it work? Private security is a very heavily regulated industry. Not anyone can call themselves a private security guard.
Very true.
You have to be licensed, etc. And then you have pretty much the exact same rights as any other normal citizen when you're private security. So you're not police. You cannot arrest people. You cannot, use weapons in any other way. But what you can do is private security can eject people from the venue, and they can detain people for the police to arrest them. There's specific laws around citizens' arrest. So it's very important to know private security are not allowed to harass. They are not police, but at the same time, event organizers have the ability to ensure that they have a presence of security at the event and eject you from the event or call the police if necessary.
Ejecting you from an event.
Yes.
I want to give you a grey area. Can I give you a curveball now when it comes to crowd management? Now, what happens is when you have an event, naturally, you can have a long line outside the venue, outside the boundary of said event.
Yes.
There too is a crowd waiting. There too is an excited crowd. There too are different facets. There could be a road nearby, cars going past. Where are the boundaries of responsibility when it comes to outside of a venue? Because think about this, right? The event organizer, you have called this event, which means technically you got the people there, 100%. But they are outside the boundaries of your control. So I want you to navigate that grey area. Where does the liability lie for an event organizer if somebody gets injured outside of your event venue?
I think they start to call you Curveball Carl.
I am Curveball Carl, of course I am, but especially with legalese.
So it's a great question, and it kind of speaks to the topic as a whole, right? Because the event organizer is only one of the people that's responsible for keeping safety. There's also the SAPs, there's also the venue owner, and there's anyone else involved in that facility. And all of these parties together need to make a plan. So the event organizer has to have a security and safety plan, but the SAPs also need to come to the party and have a presence outside the event. If there's 100,000 people at a stadium, SAPs need to not treat it like an everyday event, and they need to make sure there's a higher presence. So it forms part of that, exiting the venue and people leaving safely forms part of the plan of an event. If you look at Cape Town, the World Cup Stadium in Sea Point, they had to build an entire infrastructure around it to allow people to walk in and out and get in and out of the stadium. So definitely exiting a stadium is part of the plan, but it's not just the event organizer's job, it's also SAP's.
Yeah. So, curveball calls back. I'm sorry.
Yes.
But I mean, while we are talking about crowds, I think the most recent and most relevant thing has been the massive Travis Scott concert.
Terrible story.
It's a horrible story. And in that particular situation, there was something brewing. Now, the artist himself, you know what I'm saying? There are certain, rumors flying around here and there. But just let's look at it a little bit more vaguely. I'm going to say that, when it comes to those event organizers, smelling that there was a bit of trouble.
Yeah.
And then, what happened was terrible, and that actually transpired. And now you're actually looking at where that sort of liability lies and how to proceed. I mean, as an artist on stage, that happened at your concert. How do you proceed? You got the people who were involved and their families. How do they proceed? So there's a lot of facets to it. And, I mean, is there a sort of resolution? Or perhaps maybe a way to prevent something like this in the future?
Look, so I think we're all going to find out a lot more about this Astro World show in the coming months. I think there are a lot of ideas and rumors flying around. The fact that Travis Scott is being sued means it doesn't say anything conclusive in America. Everyone sues over everything. Yeah. But certainly, musicians need to take some responsibility. If you're inciting a crowd, you need to be able to bring that crowd back.
Yes.
And I've been to shows where the artists do incite crowds and are able to still control it.
Yeah.
Event organizers need to take responsibility for making sure there's proper security in place.
Yeah.
But and I think it's a good reminder for everyone, as COVID-19 starts to end and we start to go back into public, we need to do it safely.
We have to indeed. And of course, all sensitivity with regard to the Astro World show, but at the same time, if you are going to do this public event, you're an event organizer and you want to do something on a larger scale while you can, just remember a couple of words that Eitan actually shared with you with regard to the law behind it, the liability behind it, but more importantly, making sure that every concert goer and event goer is safe at your event.